we can see. All right. So the first condition is I is less than bar A bar. I in this case is 3. 3 is less than bar A bar. So true. How about the second condition? A bracket I dot B has to be greater than or equal to 0.
True.
Okay. And it is 2. 2 is greater than or equal to 0. So both are true. And here we go. I is less than bar A bar and A bracket I dot B is greater than or equal to 0 is true. So we move on to line 10. And line 10 prints the n member, which is -3 in this case. So it prints -3. Then we move on to line 11. And we are basically invoking the subroutine again. So we copy and paste it here. Yep.
I thought 10's printing the V.
10 is printing the V. Oh, you're right. Okay, sorry, my bad. It's printing the V, so it is 2. Very good. Okay, so now we move on to line 11. So let's do this again. Copy and paste. Okay, and this time, what is supposed to be I this time? It's printing the n member. The n member of C bracket 3 is a -3. So that means this is now -3. Okay, and then we just go ahead and optimize the width of the columns. And then go back to line 9 because this is the new invocation. And what is the result of this condition?
False.
It is false because,
-3 is not greater.
well, let's see. Let's think about what it's actually doing. -3 is less than 4 is true. So it will just go boom when it's trying to evaluate the second condition. Okay, so we'll basically say I is less than bar A bar is true, and A bracket I, and then we say boom. Okay, because by the time we try to access A bracket I, it's going to do something wrong. Okay, it will either give you a runtime error, it will either or it will give you a segmentation fault, but either way, it's not going to carry on that operation because you cannot have a negative number as an index when you use the bracket notation. So that's when this program will basically stop, and you should get a runtime error of some kind, and you should not continue tracing any further. Exactly. So what you need to do is to explain why the program is not going to continue execution anymore. So an easy explanation is I equals to -3, and that cannot, and a negative value cannot be used as an index. And that's your answer. Okay. Are there any questions about this one? No questions? Okay, if there are no questions, I will just go ahead and close it, save it.
So if we're on a final and we have a negative, that doesn't necessarily mean we traced it wrong. That means that we just need to.
You need to stop it. Yeah. So the program will have to stop at that point. Yeah. Okay. Any other questions about this one? No questions? Okay. Second question. Trace the following algorithm and figure out what value it prints. Use a spreadsheet to trace the algorithm and upload the spreadsheet to this interface. So pretty much the same thing, and this one takes quite a bit of time to trace. We can do that, but maybe later, okay? Because this is from last year. Number 3, derive the post condition of the following pseudocode. Make sure you state the preconditions of lines 1, 2, 3, 5, 8, and the post conditions of lines 3, 5, 6, 8, and 9. Your answer should explain the use of substitution and forget rules and relate pre and post conditions to each other. So basically, you need to show all the steps that you use, to derive the result here. And one thing that I forgot was to state what is the precondition of line 1. Yep.
So whatever we're putting in basically in our comments would then explain what each line almost is or what it does.
Say that again.
You know how we have this trace, so we have that one column for comments.
Mm-hmm.
So mainly whatever we usually put there is what we use to kind of explain what each line is, what it does.
No, not in this case. This one is for deriving the post condition, so it's not a trace anymore.
Oh, I see it.
Yeah, so this is not a trace anymore. I give you like a text area to write your answer.
Okay.
So just to be fair, I would also use a similar mechanism to document the answer. So in this case, I'll just use a plain text editor to document the answer, which is basically more than sufficient because we don't need any special symbols in this case. Okay, so here's the question, and the answer goes right here. And make sure I save the file first. So we'll save it to today's folder and put it into that. Okay. Practice exam for fall 09. All right. So what we need to do is to do it step by step, and I forgot to state in the question what is the precondition of line 1. If the precondition of line 1 or the beginning of the code is not given, the assumption it is just true, that we cannot make any assumptions. Okay. So we say precondition of line 1 is true, which means we don't really know anything at that point. Okay. So the other thing we have to do now is to say what is the precondition of line 2. What do you think? Okay. Now, ideally speaking, you want to explain why that is the case, because technically speaking, the precondition of line 2 is the precondition of line 1 and whatever condition is stated on line 1. So technically speaking, you have to do it this way because that's the nature of it. But since it becomes true and something, you can simplify the whole thing to just x is greater than 0. Okay. With that out of the way, we can also figure out what is the precondition of line 3, which is the precondition of line 2 and the condition specified on line 2, which is y is less than 0. So this one, you can't really do a whole lot of simplifications because the two variables are independent, and so there's no way to simplify in this case. And we can handle all the preconditions first, and then we deal with the post conditions. The next one we can deal with is the precondition of line 5. The precondition of line 5 still has the precondition of line 2. It has the precondition of line 2, and because it is the else, it is the negation of y is less than 0. But since we have something like this, it is usually better to rewrite it and say that it is just that y is greater than or equal to 0. Is that okay so far? I took the negation out. What? Sorry.
Why don't you not just put pre-2 and... Okay, never mind.
Okay. Okay, and there's no simplification at this point. Because the two variables are not related in any way, so there's no way we can simplify that. And then the last precondition we have to deal with is pre-8. The precondition of line 8 is the precondition of line 1, and the negation of the condition of line 1. So in that case, we say it is not the case that x is greater than 0. And since pre-1 is true, this one, the second one, can be simplified as x is less than or equal